were just having a bad dream, that's all, baby. That's all it was.
If only that were all, then the rest of this nightmare wouldn't be so painful. We can already hear some of that pain in Jess's voice as she attempts to comfort her son, and we can also see it in Tommy's eyes while the confusion of what is happening surrounds him.
Bad dreams make you think you've seen things that you haven't.
But they often leave you with feelings that are hard to wash away, clinging to your thoughts like the leftover paint staining Tommy's fingers. Though even when removed, it still takes time for you to fully convince yourself that it really is all gone, a lingering omen that is best dealt with by closing your eyes and thinking of something better.
Like being here with you.
While this moment is at the center of Triangle, this is not the beginning. All we are seeing here is one side, one moment from somewhere in the middle of an infinity of them, with each side beginning and ending with 3 major twists within the film, all of which have stuck with me for many years, but that I didn't fully understand until now. I already knew that this was a really good movie with a pretty good twist, but it's so much more than that now that I might just be willing to call these twists perfect.
Feel like I know this place. Feel like I know this place. Like I know this place.
Everything is back to being normal within the house, with Tommy painting at the kitchen table while Jess is taking care of the laundry because they need to leave here shortly. But she still has a moment to pick up Tommy's overturned sailboat toy from the kiddie pool and clean up the spilt paint water that is now on the kitchen floor before. Only there doesn't seem to be anyone at the door, and Jess even asked her neighbor Jack if he saw anyone, but he hasn't.
The way it was before. Just close your eyes.
Everything is cleaned up, packed, loaded, and ready just in time for them to leave, and for Jess to make it to the harbor at 8:30 to meet with Greg at his sailboat, the Triangle, where everyone has arrived just before her, with Downey and his wife Sally, who have also brought along a single friend of theirs named Heather, who they hope to see hit it off with Greg. Though it is right in the middle of their introductions that Greg just steps away to greet Jess instead, passing his new roommate Victor, played by young Liam Hemsworth, just before saying that something is wrong with Jess. Victor also picked up on this, but when asked what was the matter, Jess just hugs Greg and says,
"I'm sorry. You got nothing to apologize for."
She's just tired is all, but even with the offer from Greg to reschedule their little trip, she declines and instead chooses to just take a nap on the boat. It's the feeling of a wave crashing onto her feet that jolts her awake, and thankfully it did too, as it's been a couple hours, and she tells Heather that she had an awful nightmare, though she can't seem to remember it now. Just like how when Victor first saw her at the harbor, he was under the impression that she was supposed to bring her son along, but when asked where he was, she couldn't remember.
She stared into space for like 20 seconds, and then she said he's at school.
On a Saturday, when no schools are open, Victor clearly is concerned, but Greg assures him everything's okay because Tommy attends a special needs school that is open every day. And then he just reminds Victor to be nice to Jess, who is now topside and has a moment to spend with Greg. While Heather and Sally spend some time together talking about Greg and Jess, and her autistic son that Sally doesn't seem to care for in the slightest.
So things okay with Tommy?
The same.
But Greg does, and every word that he speaks in this scene just reveals that he not only cares about Tommy, but about Jess and all of his other friends there on the boat. Jess's words, however, seem off. When Greg mentions yesterday and how it was different when he came into the diner that Jess works at, he tells her that he wasn't there to eat, but instead his sole purpose was to invite her out sailing. She has this odd look, almost as if she had forgotten and was now being reminded of this sweet moment they shared. And now with being asked about Tommy, Greg picks up on Jess's distance, as she explains that with Tommy, everything always needs to be the same.
If I do one thing differently, I lose him.
Greg just comes out with it and asks what is wrong, but Jess isn't sure. She guesses that she just feels guilty for not being with Tommy. He sees this as a sign of her being a good mother, just as they're interrupted by Heather, which also makes for the perfect moment for me to interrupt this story and just express my admiration for this writing. And there's so many good stories that I've covered on the channel, but this, every single scene, every single line is so good. It had been years since I had seen this film, and that first rewatch was a lot of fun, but it's the next few going back and remembering what happened and seeing it happen again and again that everything is just, it's so intentional. It's so amazing. From the dialogue to the way the scenes are shot to even the looks that Jess gives during those scenes, all of it seems to have this surface level meaning and a deeper meaning underneath, and it's just all phenomenal, and I have no idea why more people don't constantly talk about this film. Just like how everyone on board the Triangle has no idea why the wind just disappeared all of a sudden. Only that this appears to be the calm before the storm, a very big and fast moving storm that even the Coast Guard doesn't seem to be picking up on their radars.
Looks like an electrical storm, over.
Greg can hear them, but they don't seem to be able to hear him back, though it may be because they're in a hurry, since we know that someone there is now killing everyone. Whatever that means. No time to think about it though, as the signal is lost and now the storm is here. Waves crashing down and the harsh rain pelting Greg as he does his best to steer, and Victor attempts to cut away the sail with everyone else safe under the deck for the moment. But the storm proves too strong, bashing holes into the deck, flipping the boat and scattering everyone under the water. Though when they surface, they find that the storm has left just as quickly as it started and that Heather is no longer with them. The 5 remaining passengers of the Triangle sit on the capsized vessel, wondering what their next step should be. But it seems they won't have to wait long as they spot a large cruise liner headed straight for them. They both see and are seen by someone on the ship, but when they try to call out, they don't get a response, and regardless of the strangeness of not getting a greeting and the hesitancy of Jess, they all still get onto the Aeolus. This ship that so much of it had to be built practically was heavily inspired by the Overlook from The Shining. But again, I have no idea how more people don't talk about how incredible some of these scenes are. Already within the first minute of them being on the ship, there are two major moments that will come back up later that you wouldn't even realize something was happening unless you went back and watched it multiple times. But then there's also these weird little scenes where our crew enters in through door 6, they take a right, but we as the camera continue straight ahead and then turn left, only for the group to somehow walk back in front of us from the left. It's such a good shot and so easily overlooked because of how smooth it is.
You all right?
I feel like I know this place.
And I feel like I've heard this before, but maybe it was just from somewhere else. Regardless though, everything here within the ship does look the same except for the neat little history corner that Downey and Victor have just found, where they can then read a little bit of the history of this ship from like the 20s and 30s and about its namesake Aeolus. Now in the film, Victor says Aeolus and Downey corrects him by saying Aeolus, and I've just never heard that before, and I've listened to Epic the Musical way more times than any person I have ever met. And they say the Greek god of the winds is Aeolus, so I will continue saying that for the rest of this video. But Aeolus was the father of Sisyphus, who was ultimately sentenced to the punishment of having to push a boulder up a big hill every day just for it to roll back down over and over again for all of eternity. And I tried to look up to see why Sisyphus got this punishment in the first place, and surprisingly, it just made it a lot more confusing. Simply put, Sisyphus had made Hades mad enough to send Thanatos, who is the embodiment of death, to kill Sisyphus because Sisyphus continually killed his own house guest. But instead of dying, Sisyphus somehow tricked Thanatos into chaining himself up to where there was no more death throughout the world, which got the attention of all the other gods who showed up to release Thanatos and to then take Sisyphus to Hades. But Sisyphus had a plan for this, because before going to the underworld, he told his wife not to do the funeral rites for him, so that was the excuse that he then used with Hades to be like, hey man, I need to go back so I can go through and have all of my funeral rites done on Earth, and then I will definitely come back to the underworld and just be here. He didn't come back. He just lived out the rest of his life in the world until he died of old age. And it is at that point that he finally received his punishment. And all of that is extremely important to this story because...
Can we just keep on moving, please?
Greg and Victor don't find anyone, but they do find Jess's keys. The only thing that makes sense is that Heather must have grabbed Jess's keys before the storm came, somehow survived, made it onto the Aeolus, and then was standing down the hallway where she dropped them and just ran away without saying anything to them. Obviously, with no other answers as to what is happening, they stumble their way into the dining hall, which is full of fresh food, prepped dining tables, and a place for a live band to play. Hey, yo! That'll make sense at the end. According to Greg's watch, only about 3 hours has passed since their trip first started at 8:30, but Jess's watch has stopped at 8:17, the same time that the ship's clock is set to on the wall. All this weird stuff with no one seemingly on board, no answers and no responses from Heather as Sally continues to yell for her, has Greg taking charge of the group, calming everyone down and telling them the plan that they will make their way up to the bridge and
then we'll go home.
I saw someone.
Wait!
Victor runs after the mystery person. Greg tells Downey and Sally to stay there and wait for Victor as he leaves to go and find the skipper, with Jess following close behind, confessing to him that she believes that Victor is in danger, and she's not sure why, but every single time she turns around, she keeps having deja vu because she feels like she knows this place. Greg tries to tell her to stop, that none of it's true, that she doesn't know this this place. It's clear that he's already irritated from Victor running off, hardly anyone listening to him, and Jess continuing to act weird, but also like she's hiding something. All of it leading to him snapping at her, telling her that she is in shock. But when she denies it, he just flat out asks if it's about Tommy.
Is it guilt? Is that what it is? Do you feel guilty?
The only response is the sound of running water coming from suite 237 down the hall. Greg slowly enters the room with Jess right behind him, and as she comes in, she is greeted by reflections of herself, the same way that all of them were when they first entered into the dining hall. But it's the mirror above the bathroom sink that catches their attention, where a note is left for them, written in blood, telling them to go to the theater. Victor keeps looking for anyone else on the ship while Greg tries to explain the plan to Jess after finding a map of the ship, meaning that he is just completely ignoring the message that was left for them in blood. His reasoning is that he has known a lot of people that have worked on ships like this, and sometimes they just like to play jokes. Jess isn't having it. She doesn't have any theories about what is going on here. All she knows is that she isn't in shock, as she then turns to go back to the dining room. It's here that Greg calls after her, attempting to get Jess to understand that all of these weird feelings that she is having are just in her head. Ships like this don't just appear out of nowhere. They have crews that keep them running, but who knows? Maybe in her world, right now, they don't.
My world is waiting outside school for his mother to pick him up and talk to me about my world.
Greg knows he messed up, but it's too late for apologies as Jess leaves him behind to walk down one of the ship's endless hallways. And instead of chasing after her, he sticks with his plan to go and find the crew of the ship. But so far, the only ones finding anything are Downey and Sally as they come across a trail of blood on their way to the theater. And while they find the theater, they don't find where the trail came from. Instead, Jess does, as she returns to the dining hall, where she only has a moment to wonder why all of the food is now rotten, as Victor enters, covered in blood, and attacks her, wrapping his hands around her throat, forcing her to the ground and attempting to take her life here and now. But Jess can't let that happen. Her world is still waiting for her, and Victor is already wounded. Reaching out, she finds where the beginning of the blood trail started and jams her finger into the hole in his skull. Victor falls away. She tries to check on him, but then hears a gunshot from somewhere else on the ship and then runs for the theater. More chaos and death await her as Downey and Sally are panicking over Greg's body, who immediately begin blaming her for this because they claim that Greg's last words were that she shot him.
I think I did it.
Why did you tell us to come to the theater?
Jess doesn't have an answer. She doesn't know what they're talking about as Sally then stands and begins screaming that she is some kind of schizo and then is shot in the chest by someone wearing a mask up on the balcony. Downey is then shot, the shooter reloads, and the echo of the gunshot is overtaken by screaming. Another slug slams into the seat that Jess is hiding behind, barely missing her. The second shot is sent into Downey, putting him out of his misery. Jess knows that this is her chance to save Sally, but they aren't quick enough. Sally is killed, leaving just a moment for Jess to run out of the theater, avoiding another blast. And it's here that we have an interesting problem with this whole story, and also the reason that I feel like I need to cover everything in so much detail. Since even these little moments of Jess grabbing a knife and hiding down in the bowels of the ship will be important later. Not so much right now, but as part of the overall story, it's huge. At least to me, someone who has put way too much thought into this film. And if only Jess wouldn't have put any thought to the sound of someone running on the deck above her, she may have seen the mass killer before getting knocked to the ground. A moment of hesitation saves her life, and a rather impressive parkour maneuver allows her to get to the deck below them and out of sight. At least for the moment, as 2 more missed shots are sent at Jess, but before she can get away, the masked maniac pulls a Blair and throws the gun, making perfect contact, sending her crashing onto the top deck, giving her time to arm herself with an axe, throw a distraction, and begin the fight with this hooded fiend. Honestly, the fight doesn't last long as Jess quickly gets the upper hand, but instead of swinging to kill, she begins hurling questions at her assailant. The only answer she gets, though, are muffled, something about the only way for her to get home is to kill them. Kill them all. It seems like Jess understands, as she decides to start with the one right in front of her. But as she swings the axe, the mysterious killer with answers falls backwards, avoiding the blow and disappearing below the waves. Catching her breath after the exhausting battle and all of the insanity, Jess is drawn into one of the cabins nearby by the sound of an old looping record. She resets it and then takes a moment to look at herself in the mirror, but then hears cries for help from outside. All of them sound so familiar, and it's as she steps out of the room that we pass through the mirror to the other side of the ship, the left side, where all of her friends are standing on the upside down triangle right next to another version of her. This is twist number 1, and obviously if you've seen the movie or seen my video on time crimes, you already knew that. But did you catch the difference? When our Jess and the crew originally got there, they also saw someone look over the side of the ship at them and not say anything, but it was the right side. This crew showed up from the left side of the ship. And at this point, I hope that you know to trust me on all of these minor observations that everyone else would just shrug off like, oh, whoops, they messed up when they were trying to put this into the film. It's here for a reason. Why are you questioning me? This Jess and this group is not the same as our Jess and our group that we showed up with at the start of this weird cycle. They don't even call out for help the same way that ours did, but our Jess doesn't pick up on this right away. All she knows in this moment is that something is even more wrong than what she originally believed when she first boarded the Aeolus. Stumbling back into the cabin again, she bumps back into the record player, causing it to begin skipping once more. As the music bleeds over into this twisted reality and even has herself skipping multiple times on her way out of this room. She then follows the voices of her friends until she can't handle it anymore and runs deeper into the twisting maze of the ship's hallways.
You alright?
I feel like I know this place.
Our Jess said the same thing, but it is hearing herself and the same conversation about Aeolus and Sisyphus that has her melting down the side of the wall only a couple of corners away from her friends. This is how she dropped her keys, the keys that her crew found earlier and that this crew finds now. She, of course, doesn't stick around for their discovery, disappearing down endless corridors until she knows that she is safe, or at least believes that she is. Because again in Suite 237, the bloody message is still there on the mirror. But we don't have time to think about that, as it's in a different mirror outside of the dining hall that Jess number 2 sees our Jess, leading to this Victor going on a chase after the mystery mirror person while our Jess makes it out to the outside deck of the ship. She just needs a moment, a long moment, to process what is happening, why this is happening, why the body of the first Downey is now floating past the ship and is no longer in the theater, but Victor doesn't give her any time to think about it, because he has a lot of questions of his own, mainly how in the world did she get up here so fast and where is Greg?
Downstairs right now is a copy of myself.
Really does sound like crazy talk when you say it out loud like this, but maybe the very real body of Downey that was there with all of the birds on it, she tries her hardest to explain that Downey's body was there and that there's bodies all over the ship, and even Victor's body is down there right now with a hole in the back of his head. Victor attempts to help her, first promising that he's not going to tell anyone about her insane ramblings, and then just simply asking logical questions. Problem is that Jess doesn't have any real answers, only warnings of what is to. It was an accident. She was just trying to get him to understand that he is in danger, and she was right. As of right now, a piece of metal that is protruding out of the ship has lodged itself into the base of Victor's skull, all because Jess was trying to get him to listen, to get him to understand that this was going to happen. The second she sees the blood spray across the wall, she takes off, leaving Victor behind. In her frantic state, she's almost spotted by the other version of herself and Greg as they exit room 237, again hearing the same argument that led to them splitting up. This time the words of Greg echoing in her mind as she tries to grasp what is happening. The way this whole scene is shot is so good. The different angles, the distant words of Greg and herself, the switch between static and handheld shots, all of it is exactly what I would want from a scene like this. Either this or what they did in Bring Her Back with the different anxiety attack moments would fit so well. Almost as well as how Jess's handwriting fits the same exact handwriting that is on all of the notes that are piled up here in this room. Has she been here before? No, we know that answer, but how many times has she already done this? The beginning of that answer lies at the bottom of the vent, along with all of her lockets that have fallen off of her neck through all the other times that she has sat here and realized that this is not the first, with the other piece of this answer being at the other end of a loaded shotgun. Now at first you would think, oh, Jess found the trail of blood from Victor and now forces him at gunpoint to go into the dining hall to then attack the other version of herself, like what happened before, just now we are getting the other side of what happened. She steps out from her hiding spot holding the other version of herself at gunpoint, waving the other version of Victor back. This isn't a loop, all of it can be changed, and she just proved that as she tries to remind Victor of what happened last time and how it is all different now. But the other version of herself, Jess number 2, still needs to be dealt with. But she can't pull the trigger, allowing herself to go free and giving her a moment to check on the still bleeding Victor.
Now you gotta be strong. I'm gonna get the others, okay?
Greg has been shot again, but this time, our Jess is ready to fight back. Running in, forcing Downey and Sally out of the line of fire, avoiding a slug, and firing one back, removing the top of the mask with it. They exit the theater, all of them still alive, with Jess just jabbering away about how they can change it, and if they can change it, they can survive, and if they can survive, they can all make it off of this boat alive. Well, almost all of them. But the only way for the rest of them to survive is for Sally to shut her mouth, for both of them to listen, take this gun, to wait here and shoot anyone that comes their way. Doesn't matter how confused Downey and Sally are, because Jess needs to go and check on Victor. But all she finds is a trail of blood leading from the dining hall where she left him, right off the side of the boat. Now is not the time for her to mourn though, as she hears another gunshot from somewhere else in the ship. It's Downey demanding that whoever is at the end of this hallway to step out and reveal themselves.
I said, who is it?
It's Jess, another Jess, and another twist. Now, this is not the same Jess that our Jess had at gunpoint in the dining hall with Victor a while ago. This is a completely different Jess that has been here longer than our Jess even has, but is not the same masked version of the Jess that originally shot our crew in the theater earlier. I know all of this makes like a lot of sense to me, and I just hope that me saying it out loud makes sense to you as well. Remember back when our Jess first walked into room 237 and she's greeted by her reflection? There was 3 of them, and that was intentional because it is telling us that at any given time, there is always 3 versions of herself either on or about to get on to the Aeolus. So technically, our Jess is now the second or the middle Jess, and the one that just pulled the bag off of her head is the third or the final Jess, and the one that didn't get shot in the dining hall by our Jess earlier is the first Jess. That probably just made it more confusing. But of course, Downey and Sally don't know any of this, but they are still hesitant to trust this Jess when she comes walking up. The problem is, this Jess knows more than anyone else on the ship, and she simply tells them that if they want to live, they will follow her. Which they do. If only our Jess was a little faster, or if Downey and Sally knew even a little bit of what is happening, they would have at least stopped for a moment longer to listen to the shouted warnings of our Jess. Instead, they choose to trust the one and only Jess that they can see that is right in front of them.
So, what are we doing in here?
Our Jess was right. They were in danger, and it's the screams from room 237 that tell her exactly that. Downey isn't making it out of this room, but Sally is able to crawl into the hallway after being stabbed in the stomach. Though she doesn't crawl for long, as she knows that running is the only real choice that she can make if she wants to survive. And it's the cries from our Jess that makes her choice so much easier. And it's actually her running that leads her to finding the emergency radio system down in the bowels of the ship, where she then makes a call that we have already heard. It's the same desperate cry for help that interrupted Greg's communications with the Coast Guard. And we also find out why she doesn't respond when Greg does reply, since she only has a moment before she is found by our Jess, so she makes a break for it before it's too late. But this also means that the other crew, the crew that this Sally showed up with, never received this call from herself, because that version of her that would have called died in the theater. Obviously, it isn't like it would have helped very much or even at all, but it is just another interesting point of where the story is filling in gaps, but also creating more holes all at the same time. With one of the holes being, did this other Greg hear our Jess call out for him over the radio? Because we know that our Jess has been able to change things up until this point, but the static will leave this question hanging over us. But what happens next, however, will both give us a lot of answers and a lot of questions, as Jess finally catches up with Sally. Jess was able to change what happened, but even this change has happened many times before. Over 30 by my count, but between all of the different versions of Sally's that are stacked up on top of each other, the different wounds that they all seem to have, and the varying degrees that each one of them has been eaten by the seagulls, it's really hard to tell. And speaking of the seagulls, there has been at least one around since the very start, with there even being a moment when they first set sail where Greg points out the seagull that is following them, saying that that bird has mistaken their boat for a fishing boat, and then saying that he's going to go hungry. But it's clear that Greg was wrong. But while the birds will come back up again, the now unmasked version of Jess that stabs Sally will not, since she was just beaten to death and thrown overboard by the other version of Jess. Jess number 1, if you will. Or I guess it would actually be Jess number 2, as when Sally passes away, the next crew and the next version of Jess show up. Meaning that the new Jess that just showed up to the Aeolus is now Jess number 1, the Jess that is down there on the deck that just killed the masked version of Jess is now Jess number 2, and our Jess is now Jess number 3. Not confusing at all. It's really not confusing when you also realize that this crew and version of Jess arrived from the right side of the Aeolus. Just like what our Jess did, but not like the Jess number 2 did, meaning that it swaps back and forth each time with each different arrival? Don't worry, because all of this weird stuff that's going on with all the different versions of Jess will come back up later, just like how I told you when our Jess first boarded the Aeolus, there were multiple shots that would come back up later, which is now. because the shots that we see then are from the perspective of our Jess now, watching a different version of herself from up the stairs and also looking out the back of the ship to watch the triangle float away. Understand that it was another Jess that did that, but it is now our Jess that is doing this. Our Jess, who with the death of Sally has fully realized that it takes all of them dying for the next versions to show up. But before following through with what she knows needs to be done, she does what she can to stop the ship. And at first I was thinking there was absolutely no way for the ship to be stopped, but honestly, there could be. She's already been able to change so much that the idea of her being able to affect the ship is not out of the realm of possibility. Her real issue here would be how much time would it take for her to get the ship to slow down or stop completely, presumably with no prior knowledge to how the ship works, but really, even if she did get it to shut down, what would it change? Because the second version of Jess has already had such a different experience than our Jess has, yet we still find her explaining to Victor everything that has happened up to this point.
She had blood on one side of her face and then I killed her.
It's so interesting how similar these two moments are, yet very different. Our Jess saw the body of Downey floating by the ship, and this Jess didn't. Our Jess only fought with the mass killer on the front of the boat, but didn't kill her or even see her face, and this one did. Though if you weren't really paying attention, you would just assume that this is the exact same version of herself that you saw earlier, who still made the same mistake of grabbing Victor's head and accidentally pushing it against the rod, puncturing his skull. This film is just so genius and subtle with what is happening that I still don't understand how it doesn't get more love. Just like the extra love that our Jess gives to this version of Victor as she walks up to him, tells him not to worry. She knows what to do, how to save him, and how to save everyone else. For there is only one way, and that is to kill everyone on board so the cycle can reset and the new versions of them will have a much better chance to survive. That isn't quite right, but Jess does have a plan. First, to fill in the rest of the missing pieces of this puzzle, like how it's actually Downey's blood that is on the mirror in room 237. Only he had begun to write that it was Jess before he died, and it's actually our Jess that comes in later to erase it and put "go to theater." Afterwards, she disposes of Downey's body and goes to get Greg's body that's still in the theater. And after this, we do find out that it really was a version of her that went and told Downey and Sally in the dining hall that Greg wanted to meet them in the theater, as she also has her own meeting with Greg on the balcony of the theater after getting suited up, masked up, and armed. But again, she hesitates too long, giving Greg the chance to realize that the shoes on this person's feet in front of him are Jess's shoes. He pleads with her just to calm down, take the mask off so they can sit and just talk all of this out. But she knows what must be done. The only way for them to not get on the boat in the first place is for her to kill everyone on board now and then be waiting at the landing bay before they get there.
I won't let any of them board, even the other me. I'll make them all stay on the upturned yacht.
Greg tries again to get through to her, but it's too late for that as she apologizes and pulls the trigger. Then wastes no time in following through with her plan by killing Downey, Sally, and almost Jess number 1. Now you would think you would know what happens next since all of this happened earlier with our Jess, but if you are that person, you clearly haven't been paying attention, because even our Jess follows her tracks from where she had hid earlier, and this Jess is not hiding there. But that also means that you can go back a whole other version of Jess that stalked our Jess and know that she didn't hide in those same spots that our Jess did, or else she would have just ran in and shot our Jess. But that doesn't happen because all of these Jesses are just so different. But after this, everything is basically the same, from the hesitation of the shot to the cool parkour move, to the gun throw it herself, to the distraction before the fight, to the fight itself. All of it surprisingly working out the same way that it did with our Jess, only this time we can actually hear what the masked version of Jess is trying to tell the other version of herself.
It's the only way to save our son. You have to kill them.
This doesn't change anything for Jess number 1, as she too swings the axe at our Jess, Jess 3, but again, it misses as she falls backwards into the water. But you know this isn't the end. We still have another big twist and more questions to be answered, with the first one being about the odd dream Jess had back on the sailboat, the one where she believed she was on a beach. The beach that she just woke up on. She wastes no time. This is what she wanted. She wanted to get back to land so she can then get back to her son, who is not at school, but instead is at home, painting at the kitchen table, along with another version of herself there. A previous version. It's through the window that we finally see what really happened that morning. The reaction that Jess had when she found that overturned boat of Tommy's outside, as she screams at Tommy about how he doesn't deserve any more toys if he's not going to take care of what he already has. It's our Jess peering through the window that scares Tommy into accidentally knocking over the cup of paint water, causing the previous version of Jess inside to not ask any questions as to why there's now paint water all over the floor, but instead just blaming him for giving her something else to do and smacking him to make sure that he doesn't do it again. Tommy runs for his room as our Jess cringes out of view from herself outside, hearing the hurtful words that this other version is saying about her son, their son, and remembering when she had said them too. It's this that puts her into motion because her job is not yet finished. As she runs to the front of the home to ring the doorbell as a distraction, and then circles around back to the shed to get a hammer and waste no time using it. If only Tommy had stayed in his room, Jess could have just took the other one's place and there wouldn't have been any real problems, but instead, she now has to attempt to explain what just happened, what he just saw. Emotions are already hard for many people to really grasp, and for Tommy here, it would be even worse. From having one version of his mother being so cruel just moments before to this version of her now grabbing onto him, hugging him and apologizing for everything. The journey for Jess has been long, and even for us watching it has too. But for Tommy, all of this is happening right now. And the only answers that he gets about all of the insanity that he just experienced is that it was just a bad dream, and that sometimes bad dreams make you think you've seen things that you haven't. Though the body in the other room is still real and still there, but that is what she had to clean up in the beginning and what she had to load up in the back of the car so they can finally leave and start anew. As they drive to their new beginning, our Jess confesses to Tommy that that woman that used to hurt him and yell at him and be so mean is no more, that Jess was not mommy. This Jess, our Jess, is. She's cut off by a seagull, splattering across the windshield. She immediately pulls over so she can remove the bird from the road. Tommy doesn't like any of this, but Jess just tells him to calm down. It's as she walks to dispose of the gull that across the street we can see a band practicing, and their symbols on the side of their instruments, they look so similar, and the repetitive song that they keep playing just sounds so oddly familiar. A pile of dead seagulls is waiting for her, This isn't the first time a version of herself has made it to this point. She knows this, but she refuses to let that stop her. Jumping back into the car, she rips out of the parking lot, Tommy screaming in the back seat about the blood all over the windshield. She pleads for him to stop and then breaks, demanding that he stop screaming. She realizes right away what she has done and does her best to start speaking softer to him. Using the wipers to smear the blood across the windshield only makes it worse, and her turning to calm Tommy down doesn't help. Everyone stops. Other drivers, people walking down the street, the band, all of them rush over to the accident, but it is too late to help either of the passengers. Jess's body, the body that should have been zipped up in the bag, is now lying out in the street, with Tommy's body not far away. But our Jess, the one that we have been following for this entire story, is just fine, standing in front of the car, looking over the scene as a driver, as he specifies, walks up behind her and claims that no one will be able to help. There is nothing that can be done to bring the boy back. He then asks if she needs a ride, and a strange look comes over her face. She says yes, she needs a ride to the harbor. For the third time, we find Jess waking up, only this time it is at the beginning, back at the harbor, where the driver wakes her, first telling her that he will leave the meter running, and then asking if she will be back. She will. She promises. Closing the door, she starts the walk down to the boat, then is stopped by Victor, who doesn't actually know her, but feels like he does with how much Greg has talked about her. And one thing he does know is that she has a son, who he thought was supposed to be with her today.
How come you didn't bring him along?
Her answer, after a moment, is that Tommy's at school. Victor isn't sure about this, but chooses not to press the issue, instead leaving that for Greg and giving him a passing warning that Jess isn't okay. The hug and the apology should have proven this to him. Even though he doesn't understand what she has to apologize for, he still gives her the chance to stay. The option for all of them to not go out sailing that day, but she has to.
You sure?
The cycle must continue. It has to repeat. She has to try again, however many times it takes, so she can make it back to a time when her son was still alive, even if it means sacrificing her friends over and over and over again and breaking her promise to death. There are so many moments of foreshadowing throughout this film, from the very first lines all the way through to the end. Even her telling the driver that she promises that she will be back isn't technically a lie, because she will, it just won't be at the harbor. The final twist is kind of a long one, since it starts at the moment that she sees the pile of seagulls and goes all the way through to the moment that she tells the driver that she needs a ride to the harbor. Two big reveals all wrapped up in one twist, that it doesn't matter what she does or what she thinks she has done, that there is no way for her to escape this loop. But understand, she can change it. She can just never get out of it.
We could change the pattern. Did you see?
Doesn't matter how many times she goes through, the result will always be the same. And whether she boards the Aeolus from the right side or the left side, every version of her, both good and bad, are all still her. Though I am left with some questions. This time, when she returns, will she remember everything that has already happened? Or will she just think that it is all some strange dream that she can hardly recall? And even if she does, what difference would it make anyway? To understand that that is the point is what made all of this really click for me. Yes, it was very cool to have all of these different twists and to have different versions of herself run around and even have the moment at the end and go, oh no, she hasn't made it out of the loop. She's been here before. But to look more into Sisyphus' story and to understand that his punishment was one of futility and acceptance made this whole film come full circle. Jess's punishment is to repeat this process only to make it back to her son and to fail again. It doesn't matter how Sisyphus pushes the boulder up the hill. He knows that it will always roll back down to the bottom anytime he gets close to the top. And Jess knows, even if she forces herself to forget each time, that she must go through all of this insanity to at least see her son again. This is why this twist, this final twist of why she makes her choice to go back and repeat this process, is perfect. The story is incredible, the acting is fantastic, the predictability is right where it needs to be to set up so much and still throw you at the end. Like this twist with all of the seagulls has stuck with me for the last 15 years, and the satisfaction is as high as it can get, and even the poltergeiger, which is the most important because it's my opinion, it's maxed out. I adore this movie and this story and this twist, and I've been so glad to see other people recommending it for this series, and I'm just so excited to be able to share this story and everything that happens with these twists with anybody that for whatever reason made it to this point and hasn't watched this movie. Go watch it. What are you doing? Seriously, go watch it if you haven't seen it, and if you haven't watched it in a while, go back and watch it. And ask yourself the question, as you watch our Jess, does she know what is happening throughout this entire thing? You never know. It might just change how you see the movie and what version of her you think you've been watching this whole time. But with that, we now have 3 perfect twists on our search for the greatest twist in all of horror. And I think now I can tell you about a twist that I have been planning for the twist series. Because while we have been searching for the greatest twist in all of horror, there are a lot of twists that are a little bit farther away from being considered horror adjacent. And I know a lot of you have already requested a couple different twists that are not even considered horror adjacent, and you've said that, but you would also like to see them in the twist series. So if you have some that you would like to see that need to be a part of the twist series to find the actual greatest twist of all time, let me know down in the comments. And with all of that, if you made it to this point in the video, I thank you so much. You have no idea how much it helps when you make it to the end of a video. That's awesome. You're amazing. Thank you. And of course, there are a lot of other awesome people, including all of the channel members that help make all of this possible. And that's why they've been getting their own version of all of the videos I've posted here lately without any of the ads, so that way they can just enjoy the whole story without interruptions. And because you are here, what do you think? I got a new desk. I'm standing up. It's one of those fancy desks, and I got a new arm for the microphone so I can move around and I can do stuff. It's super cool. I do enjoy this. Also got a new chair. Look at the new chair. Wow, it's so cool. It's so cozy and comfy. Wow, don't you wish you could sit in it? And I wish that you could also be here and sit in my very old, comfortable chair. And I would hope that you know that if you were here, that there aren't any other versions of me anymore. You can trust me on that. You can also take my hand. Have an extra blessed day so I can see you in the next one.